and Emotion Code practitioner. And I know after the kids are grown, women are often looking for something different to do. Sometimes they start a business, sometimes they're applying for a job. But how do you write an appropriate resume for these days? Today, I've invited Dr. Heather Rothbauer Wanish to join us. Heather is the owner of Feather Communications. She's written thousands of resumes for clients since 2008. She loves giving people confidence in themselves during their job search and enjoys finding the right words to describe their work history and experiences. Heather has a BBA in management, an MBA, and a PhD in organization and management. And Heather is here to join me today. Excited to have you here, Heather.
Yeah, thanks, Cora. I really appreciate your invitation to be a part of this.
Yeah, I just thought it was so appropriate because I know when my kids have been looking for jobs and I tell them how to do stuff, look for jobs and write a resume, but the stuff that I know is so old fashioned because I haven't written a resume for a long, long time. So it's nice
Sure.
to have some fresh eyes on it.
Yes. Yep. And I absolutely love doing it. I think the unique thing about writing a resume for somebody else is like I'm objective about the information. And that's one of the reasons why it's easier for me to write a resume for somebody else, even than it is for me to write my own resume.
Yeah, I think sometimes you just feel like you're, bragging about yourself when you're writing a resume, and in a way you are, but you want to enhance the good things that you have, and especially as women, it can be hard to promote yourself.
Right. And so I've started telling people, yeah, so a lot of times they feel like they're bragging, they feel like they're being boastful. Oh, I can't say that I did that. And so I've just started telling people, like, if it happened, it's a fact, and you are just a reporter reporting facts. So sometimes that's an easier way to think about it rather than worrying about bragging or being boastful of yourself or your accomplishments.
Yeah. And what do you think some different things are about how people write resumes now, say, than compared to many years ago?
Oh
There's
my. There's a lot of things. Even when I learned how to do resumes, the very first thing you did at the top was put, after your contact information, you put an objective. And usually it said something to the effect of, to land a position where I can grow and learn within a company, which honestly doesn't tell us anything at all. So that's one of the things that's changed a lot is we no longer put an objective on a resume at all. And instead we fill that space with more of a career summary. So that's definitely one thing that's changed. The other thing I think that's different is when I learned to do a resume, you put all of your jobs. This is basically like my life story as far as work goes. And today we really only include about the last 10 or 15 years because that's what's most relevant. And honestly, if you start including things prior to that and putting dates on it, you start to date yourself. And as much as we like to think that age discrimination doesn't happen, it's a thing. And so we have to be careful with how much job history we're putting out there as well. And the personal information. Uh, don't put any sort of personal information on there. Sometimes people
yeah,
in the old days used to put like married with 3 kids or just really detailed personal information, and obviously we don't do that any longer either because we want to be hired based upon our work and our professional merits.
yeah, for sure. And you must have some special tips for, say, moms that haven't worked for a long time. Maybe they stayed home and they raised the kids. Now the kids are gone and they'd like to get a job, but they actually haven't been in the workforce for many, many years. And so they would
Right.
have some big gaps. How do you make that, sound enticing to an employer?
So what I typically do, especially if somebody's been a stay-at-home parent, is say something like, put a notation on there that says, from whatever the years were, 2005 through 2012, functioned as a stay-at-home parent, balanced schedules, volunteered within the community, and put some different things on there because when we think that, oh, I was just a stay-at-home parent for these X amount of years, it's like, wait a second, like you did a ton of stuff during that time. How can we leverage this into whatever it is that you want to be doing in your career? So there used to be kind of a case of case of thought where you kind of just ignored that time, and now it's like, no, like let's justify that time, say what you were doing, be specific about the skills that you learned during that time and how those relate to what it is you want to be doing in the future. So I definitely focus on that. And also, a lot of times when people have been a stay-at-home parent, they've done a lot of wonderful things in the community. They've volunteered, they've held leadership positions, and focus on that. I mean, it's not like you were just sitting home, like you were doing a lot of things. So let's see how that can be leveraged to focus on your future job opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's really important, that to realize that a lot of the things that you've done at home counts and is really
Absolutely.
valuable in the workforce for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
and the other thing I've noticed too is there's a lot of people that are, in that sandwich generation where maybe their kids are just leaving or on the cusp of leaving, like you work with the empty nesters, and maybe they're taking care of older parents too. So it's the same type of thing. Like put a notation on there and said, during these 2 years, I was caring for an ailing parent, or, was the leading healthcare provider for a family relative, whatever it happens to be, because I think that as things change in our economies and in the world, people understand that you have lives and you sometimes have to take a step away from the, traditional workforce.
yeah, and I think when you are caring for parents too, that shows a lot of stamina and things that would be important for a job too, that you are,
Absolutely.
that you're willing to figure out how to make all those things work. Now, I
Yes.
know that you have a download for tips on how to help write resumes after
Mhm.
40, and
Mhm.
people can get that from you. We'll put the link in later, but maybe you can share a couple of the tips that are on there just to give them an idea.
Absolutely. So this is my favorite thing to do, because as much as I say I write resumes, like what I actually do is give people confidence during their job search. So if you're over the age of 40, a couple of really easy tips to implement are typically like put your education at the bottom. Most of the time your professional work outweighs that education. Take the dates off of your education. It doesn't matter. Like I never put dates on education at all. Also, make sure that you have a skills section towards the top of the document. That section typically focuses on some of the soft skills like project management, cross functional teamwork, communication skills, interpersonal abilities. Those skills are the things that will allow you to get through those online tracking systems, because most companies use an online application form. And just making sure that your format is workable. Don't use resumes that have like a lot of columns and graphics. Something simple, something horizontal that can be easily read by a person or one of those systems is really important. And then my last tip, and there are 10 tips actually in the download, but the last tip I would tell you is just make sure whenever possible you have quantitative information. Saying you increase sales, okay, well that's great, but if you can say that you increase sales by $50,000 within a 90-day time period, that means a lot more to someone. So anytime you can include a percentage, a number, or a dollar amount, do it, because people's eyes are drawn to that and you'll be much more likely to be noticed when somebody's getting multiple resumes.
Yeah. And what are some of the sort of things you can share that people would put down that have stayed home with the kids and maybe haven't been in the workforce for a while, so they don't have that sales
Sure.
background to share? What are some kind of nice ways to say, that I've stayed home and that I have some skills to offer?
So you could say things like, you balance multiple priorities, you develop schedules for 7 family members or however many family members there were. You could say, served as a key player in the local parent teacher organization, or provided leadership on the fundraising committee at your kid's school. Just things like that. Think if you really sat and made a list of everything you do, I promise you that you will find things that you can utilize on your resume. Even, I mean, as sometimes people don't think anything of this because we do it every day, but like planning meals,
Yeah.
just doing things like that, it's like that's planning, that's leadership, that's organizing, that's being a team player, making sure people are where they need to be when they're supposed to be there. Those are the types of things that we could put on there. So any volunteerism, any sort of organization, detail orientation, serving on committees, serving on teams, being a coach for the Little League, being a coach for the soccer team. All of those things are things that you could utilize on your document.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of moms volunteer on their PTA or the PAC, whatever they call them at their school. That's another
Yeah,
huge one, right?
absolutely. And
Yeah,
the other thing is, if you did that and you're like, well, I don't have numbers to include, you could say, served as a team member in a 50 parent organization. There's a number. It's things like that that show that you can communicate, work with different groups, and balance all these priorities. It doesn't matter what job you're applying for, those things can be used at any job.
yeah, yeah, and that is an important job because you're a liaison between, the teachers and the parents and working with the administration at the school to do things. That's an
Yes.
important job that I think people write off a lot of the time.
Totally. And I would encourage, people that have been stay-at-home parents, like honestly, sit and make a list. Think about everything you did during the day. You will, because otherwise in your mind, you minimize it. You think, well, I just did this or I just did that. Get rid of the word just
Yeah.
and make a list, because I promise you will find things that you can use. And after you look at that list, you will realize how much stuff that you do or you did, and you'll be able to come up with things to utilize on your resume.
Yeah. And so if they're getting started and they've never done a resume before, there's some basic templates or something that you can start with to and kind of fill in the blanks to get started because it's kind
Yes.
of, yeah.
Otherwise, you're just staring at a
Yeah.
blank document. It's like you have no idea what to do. So yes, I mean, I have a template on my website. There's other online ones that you can use. But in general, the order of things is your name and contact information at the top, a career summary, skills section, work history, education. That's it. Like those are the basic sections. And what I would encourage people to think about also is when I say work history, I didn't say paid work history. I'm
Mhm.
saying history. So it could be volunteerism, it could be the stay at home time, it could be you took care of an ailing family member. It's your work history. So it doesn't have to be paid in order to be in that section.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really important to think of. I mean, you may have been paid or you may have, helped out in your husband's business or any kinds of things. It's really thinking about all the things that you've done and they are all important and how that can look on that resume when you're applying. And even right now, people are still getting jobs. There's lots of new jobs being created out of this crazy time that we're living in. So there's always opportunities out there. And to kind of maybe think of something that hasn't been done before, there's probably going to be new kinds of things that show up.
Well, and the other thing, I think one of the skills that anybody watching this can put on their resume today is adaptability and flexibility, because everyone right now has to be adaptable and flexible. And those are skills that companies are always looking for.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So you've got lots of tips. We've got your website running along the bottom here. So if people want, there's some other things on there besides the freebie that you got for us today.
Yes, there's a whole page that says resume information or resume services. If you click on that, I have all sorts of free downloads. One even talks about words, because sometimes people get stumbled on the words and I don't know how to say this, or I keep saying this word over and over. So I actually have a download with words on it, that will just give you some ideas and some tips for that too. So, and if anybody has any questions, they can definitely contact me through the website. And one of the things I would say is I do offer free resume reviews. So if you make a resume and you're like, I don't know if this is good or not so great, I'd be happy to look at it and just give you some feedback also.
Oh, that's great because yeah, that's the hard part. You don't know what the expectation is in as a resume. So yeah, you might get some stuff out there and go, I just don't know if this is
Right.
appropriate or not. And for the times they evolve all the time. So it's nice to have somebody on there that go, yeah, this is not what they're looking for these days. It can kind of go like this, but at least they can start with a draft.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's the thing, is like, just start. You can always improve it. No one's resume is ever perfect. There's always things that are changing and you can add to it, but just get started. And at least then, if and when you see a job opportunity, that you want to apply for, your resume won't be the reason that you're not going ahead and doing it.
Yeah, and make sure there's no mistakes. Right? And
That too.
right?
That too. Yeah, especially if you decide to put detail oriented
Yeah,
as a skill, and then you're like, wait a minute, you spelled customer incorrectly. Yeah, be careful.
yeah, yeah. Read it, and reread it. I know that's one that always drives people crazy because you think you're taking this time to do a resume and you didn't take the time to make sure there's no spelling mistakes. Yeah,
And don't just use spell check, because yes, it finds words that are spelled wrong, but it won't flag the words that maybe are not the right words to be there in the first place. So
yeah,
be
right.
careful with that.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's awesome. So, great tips from Heather today, everybody. Um, if you're looking at writing a resume, just check out her website, feather-communications.com,
Yep.
and get some tips, and then send her off a draft and let her take a look and see how you're doing with it. Just
Yes.
so,
That.
yeah, and just do it. Yeah, yeah. Like I said, once you're an empty nester, things change, and it's time to start doing something. So if applying for some kind of a new job is what you want to do, just do it. Now is your time. So thanks so much again, Heather, for joining me today. And if anybody wants more information about being an empty nester or join my Facebook group, just comment below and say yes, and I'll send you the link to join my group. And if you have any more questions for Heather about writing a resume or how to get that put together, check out her website, and I'll put the link for her freebie in the comments. So thanks so much,
Well,
and see you soon.